Just let me know when we're ready to go. Ready to go? Okay. I understand we have a pretty tight time frame to work with here, so I'm going to give an abbreviated version of this and hopefully allow some time for any Q&A that you all might have. But first, quick introduction. I'm Eric Brady with Enterprise Fleet Management, regional manager for our Idaho office that opened up about 18 months ago as part of an expansion from our Utah operation. I have Matt Pryor with me here today, and a county executive on our team who helped work with Raylan and the police department to put together this analysis. So I will go ahead and dive into this really quickly and try to give you a condensed version. We'll look at a quick summary recap of what we've looked at, an intro to enterprise, fleet management, some current partners, and then finally the replacement plan and 10-year analysis that we put together. We also have a safety audit, some follow-ups on our maintenance programs, and then look at next steps and what it takes to start a partnership with us. So as we look at where we are in the process, on the left side, process steps, you can see we have customized the program based on some data that we've gathered and some feedback that we've worked on with your team to make sure that we've tailored this to be as financially as impactful as possible for the police department and the non-emergency response vehicles. So if you look at the middle portion at the fleet overview, you see we've analyzed 152 city vehicles, and we've excluded medium duty, anything with heavy aftermarket equipment that we couldn't quite dial down, or UTVs. And the initial year of the partnership, we analyzed the oldest 70 vehicles of those 152. And then just below that, you can see the police fleet. We have 107 vehicles represented there. And we've completed a replacement worksheet for what we would recommend starting with in 2025. So as you can see right off the bat, the city has over 250 light-duty vehicles, so it's a significant cost and expense. And what we're offering is a way to manage that a little bit more proactively and drive down your operating costs in the long run by actually running a newer fleet. So key objectives on the right side: proactive replacement strategy. Find a starting point for how we do this. When you're looking at over 250 vehicles, it can get easily overwhelming when looking at, what's a starting point for this. So as we look at Enterprise as a whole, so Enterprise Fleet Management is an affiliate of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I assume many of you folks are familiar with. We use a lot of the same tools and resources, but we actually work with government entities and businesses with their owned and financed vehicles. So rather than a rental model, we're actually more of a middleman to help use some of those strategies to keep costs as low as possible. So we have 11,000 customers across the country and over 700,000 vehicles on our program at this point. In the top right corner, you can see 60 local offices, of which Idaho is one of the newest ones as our company has expanded. And what we do, big picture, this is our cycle of service, starting with acquisition on the top part, all the way to resale and everything in between those points. So financing the vehicles, whether it is a traditional finance to zero, an open-ended municipal lease that many of our clients in the government space use, or traditional cash purchase is possible as well. We customize those vehicles with aftermarket, whether it's lights and sirens, snow plows, spreaders, things like that, and we offer maintenance and fuel programs. So those are just a few of the key pieces that go into the program. But at the end of the day, what we are in business to do is help our clients pinpoint that optimal time to replace vehicles. What we know as a company that manages between the rental side and the fleet management side over 2 million vehicles, that there is a time when it makes more sense to go ahead and sell that vehicle rather than keep it, let it continue to depreciate and pay more in maintenance and lose out on fuel economy and safety benefits of replacement vehicles. So we're applying a little bit of that rental model to our clients' fleets. Now, we're not necessarily selling them at 12 months like they do sometimes on the rental side, but if it's 3, 4, 5 years, we want to make sure that we are looking at the main cost centers that go into managing a fleet in each specific vehicle and selling it at the exact right time based on the market and operating expenses. Did want to reference some current partners that are on the program, from City of Hammond to Blackfoot, some other national names that you would recognize there, like Chicago, Vernal, Utah, and then down at the bottom right, you can see we do have a contract with Sourcewell. So as far as due diligence goes, that is an option if you did want to piggyback off the contract that we have with Sourcewell. Check my time here. Okay, so getting into some data. So first we have to, before we can make any sort of recommendation, we kind of have to establish where the fleet is at today. So when you look at this profile here, I believe this is, was this the police fleet here?
This is the city fleet.
This is the city fleet. So we looked at 93 vehicles here, if we start in the top left corner. Average age over 15 years, annual mileage pretty low, very standard for what we see in this space. And the annual acquisition's about 5, and the average model year is a 2008. So due to the purchase history, you're looking at a holding period of about 14 years. And what we would recommend is, moving away drastically. If you look just below that in the model year analysis chart, you have a lot of vehicles on that right side of the graph, 30 that are over 20 years old. We want to move to the left side of that. By doing that, we will recommend replacing more vehicles, but we're going to drive down costs in the long run by keeping those maintenance costs as low as possible, executing on a good government buy, selling it at the right time. So we have the tools and analytics to help you guys execute it. And going to the next page, this is a replacement schedule. So of those 93 vehicles analyzed that we just took a look at, there are 23 vehicle types starting on the left-hand side. First thing that we noticed there is there's an opportunity to condense those vehicle types. Do we need 5 types of half-ton trucks? Can we simplify that to 1, maybe 2, and really make it a little bit easier to maintain the fleet as well? So what we would recommend here is if you look at the fleet replacement schedule, in 2025 we have 45 vehicles slated for replacement. Those are replacing the oldest, highest mileage, highest maintenance vehicles in the fleet right off the bat. And then as you could see in 2026 and 2027, how we phase into the partnership from there. Now this gives us the biggest financial impact in the partnership by capitalizing on as much resale value as we can in those fully depreciated assets early in the partnership. And how we get to that phase in the upper right corner, you see replacement criteria. So in fiscal year 25, we're replacing everything that's 15 years and older or more than 100,000 miles. These are mostly based on age. In 2026, you can see it's 13 years, and then to 11 years, 9 years, and then finally in 2029, replacing the remaining vehicles. This is by no means a requirement or a 5 or 10 year contract that you would be entering. This is just simply the biggest financial impact that we can make as we start the partnership. So all of that leads into this 10-year recommendation that we have here, this 10-year analysis. So the top portion is showing the average spend on these vehicles today. So we've kind of pared it down a little bit. Again, we're using data that we are confident in. So anything with a lot of aftermarket equipment or that we were unsure of, we left out of this analysis. We can definitely still help with that stuff, but we want to make sure we're focused on what we actually feel good about from a data standpoint. So when you look at fleet analyzed, we have 70 vehicles. The current cycle is 14 years. The current maintenance at 29 cents per mile comes out to about $200 per month on average. And then to the right of that, fleet growth is 0%. Annual miles, as we reviewed earlier, 8,300. And then current miles per gallon on this fleet is about 10. We did use $3 for the price per gallon of fuel. I know that's up a little bit right now. When we did this a few months ago, that was the current rate for the region. Just right of that, you can see proposals, and the proposed fleet stays at 70. The proposed cycle is 5 years compared to the current at 14, and the maintenance on those new vehicles would go from $200 a month to a little under $73 per month. So those are the inputs, and that ultimately gives us this orange line just below that, which is our estimate of what these 70 vehicles cost the city today on an annual basis. So if you look at, we'll work left to right, starting with the average, and you can see fleet size 70, you're replacing 5 per year. All 70 of those are owned for the simplicity's sake for this analysis. 0 are leased, To purchase those 5 vehicles with cash costs $191,000 per year. There's $0 lease budget, and when we sell 5 of those 14-plus-year-old vehicles, we're getting about $8,000 of equity. The maintenance estimate is $168,000, and the fuel spend is about $174,000, making the total fleet budget today, if you continued managing this the way you did, about $526,000. Now, I'll just review the first year of the partnership, and you can kind of see how things ebb and flow, and we phase into this over a 10-year period. But in the first year, fleet size stays at 70. Annual needs goes from 5 to 45. At that point, you own 25. You have 45 on lease. The purchase budget goes to 0. The lease budget goes to $334,000. We are going to capture about $140,000 of equity because we're selling 45 vehicles. Maintenance budget is significantly reduced by roughly $70,000. Fuel budget is reduced by about $40,000, making that fleet budget in year one $427,000 compared to $526,000, and that's replacing over half the fleet. So as we phase in, because we replace, in this model, we've replaced 45 vehicles in the first year, it does ebb and flow a little bit, but this is how we ultimately get to the biggest impact over a 10-year period, which is $413,000. So that, in a nutshell, is part of the study that Rayland mentioned earlier. By us collecting this data, we did a similar analysis for the police fleet that I will just go over very quickly. I'll just jump straight to the 10-year analysis for this one. 107 vehicles, the potential there if we replace 35 vehicles in the first year of the program over a 10-year period, about $1.4 million of savings at stake if we're rotating those vehicles at the right time. So we've identified significant savings by driving down the average age of the vehicle. What Enterprise brings to the table is the strategy and the ongoing management to make sure we're still sticking to this program. We're able to analyze every make and model every single year to make sure we're in the most cost-effective vehicle that is the right tool for the job, and we're keeping it for the right period of time. And this is an example of what that analysis looks like. So we would do this a couple times a year or on an as-needed basis to see which manufacturer has the best total cost of ownership. So in this example, for a half-ton, you're looking at $1.17 per mile for a Toyota Tundra. So part of this is looking at the acquisition cost, maintenance cost, fuel, as well as residual value at the end of a 4-year term, or sorry, 5-year term in this example. This Utilimark data from 2018 is just a little backup for what we use for our maintenance estimates on the existing fleet, and this is a safety audit that we did on the existing aged vehicles that the city of Caldwell currently has. This is an example of some maintenance shops that are on our program. So as part of this, you would get access to our buying power and oversight when it comes to maintaining your vehicles, all the way from oil changes to major mechanical work. That is the majority of what we have. There are a lot of supporting programs that we mentioned earlier, as well as a website. So we do provide some tools and technology for department heads to be able to manage their vehicles proactively themselves. I will stop there and see if there are any questions that we can answer while we still have a few minutes.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you so much. Appreciate that, and I apologize for the shortness on the time, but great information, and huge shout out to Raylyn as well. In looking at this, I think it's great to look at these options and opportunities, so grateful for that. Councilor Stoddard. Oh, sorry, did you not have a question?
The light's on.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
You went through that in a hurry, but just a few questions. On a normal, say a corporation, for instance, residual cost, in other words, the cost that you would get back when you sold a vehicle, how do you justify that compared to leasing it? Because the city would get back money on the vehicles that they sell.
Sure. So this is an open-ended municipal lease, and basically that allows us to finance it to a fair market value. So, for example, if we sell a vehicle for above what the fair market, what the amount owed on is, that actually comes back to the city. So the equity does, the city does participate in the equity in this type of lease. It's really just a fair market value finance.
Okay, and what about depreciation that the city would realize had its own vehicles versus what we're doing with you?
From an accounting standpoint, you can operate the same way that you do today.
Okay, and then on vehicle maintenance, you listed several shops there. Would our vehicles have priority relative to the police department or fire department?
Not necessarily priority, but when they do go into the shop, they will be worked on quickly. The part prices, the labor rates will be in line with where they need to be. There will be additional oversight from our ASC certified techs to make sure everything is in line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Doty?
Just tracking, so you gathered all this data for us, but how are we going to track this data in the future? So I retired from the state police. Each officer was required, or civilian was required to enter this data, how many miles, and then our data manager would be able to tell if we needed that vehicle or needed to purchase it in the future. So who's going to collect all this data to see, hey, this vehicle's 10 years old and it doesn't go anywhere, it only has 8,000 miles or whatever?
Absolutely. That's a huge piece of this, and having access to that data through the operating programs is how we're able to provide that ongoing management. So the fuel card, for example, will capture current mileage each time. Every time a vehicle goes in for maintenance, the shop will record that as well. Our website will use an algorithm to make sure we're using the best data between those 2 points, and our team has access to that. We will provide at least quarterly meetings to the city moving forward to keep an eye on this stuff, bring together proactive recommendations for you.
All right. I think Councilor Stoddard covered the rest, so.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions? Okay, excellent. Ray Lynn?
Thank you so
And
much for
maybe
the
kind of
time.
next steps too, like as we move down this
So
potential path.
next steps would be, we're looking to bring on the police department first within the summer, and then the rest of the city over the course of fiscal year '26 with that contract, if council is open to this lease concept, so.
Very good. Any questions for just Grayling? Councilor, all good.
I'll try to be quick. So, Raylyn, this is my big concern. I have experience looking at leases before. So, year one, we get 45 leased vehicles, as discussed in the presentation. Year two, maybe we get another 25 leased vehicles. Well, by year three, if as like right now, as we see our revenues going down, and we cannot continue the lease because of shortfalls in revenue, are we losing vehicles? I mean, how do we keep, because you have lease payments on 70 vehicles now. That's a huge number of fixed costs. When you own the vehicle, you just don't buy another vehicle, but with a lease, you've got that.
For sure, yes. And that is part of the reason I think, working with Enterprise, part of that is we would be able to reduce our fleet a little bit, to reduce those payments, is my understanding with the contract, is that we have the availability to reduce our fleet. And so then we would not be paying that lease payment if we reduced our fleet. So essentially, it's a contract, either we're in and we're paying the lease payment, or if we don't have those revenues to match and I foresee a downturn, then it would be, hey, we need to not renew these leases, or we need to sell these cars and reduce that payment, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ray Lynn? Okay, anything else?
Nope, that is it, thank you.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that so much. And thank you so much for coming and presenting. It's great information, so I'm sure we'll be following up in the near future. So, okay, and that is all that we had for our workshop. So we'll go ahead and conclude that, and we'll be back here just after 6 o'clock to begin our